We're here in my local woodlands in Devon and it's mid-autumn, the light levels are low and everything's looking absolutely beautiful. It won't be long before autumn is here fully with its blaze of glory when it comes to the colour and textures. And I'm just here to have a walk and observe, see what's happening and feel inspired. When I'm looking to feel inspired or maybe get some ideas, or even just to take a break from my studio and my laptop and things like that, I will always come out to nature to just spend some time either going on a walk on my own or with my boys. I leave my phone at home and I just walk and observe what's going on with the seasons and the change in the plants and the natural world around me. And I find that taking those moments to step away from work, step away from the busyness of our lives really helps to kind of clear my mind and set me back and allow me to really be inspired and come up with new ideas about how to create and what to create with. I think it's really easy to get stuck on our phones, and Instagram and Pinterest are absolutely amazing for getting ideas and inspiration, but it is all through a screen, and really the magic happens when you step outside and go for a walk. You know, just maybe even sit down and study a plant material. So for example, the fronds here on a bracken or the turning leaves on a tree, and observing all of the different colours that kind of come together in nature's best way can fill your mind with inspiration and ideas for future makes. So we moved to Devon a couple of years ago, and before that I lived in a busy town in Surrey, which I grew up in, and we had a lovely, beautiful kind of town garden and an allotment, but our access to free and wild space was quite limited unless we went out and actively found it. And what I've noticed since I've moved to Devon and I'm surrounded by just a pure abundance of the natural world, it has really influenced my work. So when I look back kind of 4 or 5 years ago at the things I was making, they were quite tight, quite neat. You know, maybe using not so many of the wild materials that I use now, the forage materials. And since moving here, things have definitely developed in a much more sort of wild, free and wayward way, which I absolutely love. And I think when it comes to you starting on this journey, you know, make sure you're pulling in influences from every other aspect of your world. So take some time to walk around, see what's going on, you know, in your local park if you're in the city, but also if you can go out to the woods or even the coastline. There's amazing, beautiful kind of wildflower and grasses all along the coastline, which can be so inspirational. And just see how they can feed into your work and the way that you're designing. Autumn is my absolute favourite season. It's the best when it comes for dried flowers anyway. You've got all of that gorgeous abundance, you know, being harvested throughout the summer, and nature's basically doing its own thing when it comes to drying flowers and leaves and plant material for you. So as well as autumn, I do love to watch the other seasons ebb and flow. I think, you know, winter, many of us find it a really depressing time, but actually there's so much magic happening underground where plants are basically restoring for the following seasons. And just to see bare branches and lichen-covered, you know, sticks and things like that can just be really, really magical. So I try to, as much as possible, live in the season that we're in and enjoy that time for all of the beauty that each of the different seasons bring to us. But I have to say, autumn, without a doubt, is my favourite. So for most of my life, I've actually been working in jobs which have seen me sat in front of my computer in offices with other people. And it's only in the last kind of 2 to 3 years that I've been lucky enough to be able to do this as my full-time living. And I can honestly say that the impact that it's had on my well-being to constantly be surrounded by the natural world, whether that be in my studio, creating pieces, or going for walks to feel inspired or foraging, has really, really helped me from a mental well-being perspective, as well as just living a less frantic life. When it comes to developing your own style, it is an iterative process and it takes time. And I would say that mine in no way is honed as it is right now. I see that it's going to continue evolving the more I kind of learn and listen and take in my surroundings. And so when it comes to you kind of thinking about how you want to develop your style, always think about where you're going to get your inspiration from, but also think about the things you love. So for me, you know, I've mentioned autumn being my favourite season, but it's those colours, those muted tones, they really calm me down, and that's what makes my heart sing, and that's why I continue to create in those tones. But for you, maybe you love the height of summer, but just do what makes you happy and makes you fall in love with the work that you're creating. Other areas that I will look at if I'm looking for inspiration, maybe not even intentionally, but just being, absorbing kind of the things that you're experiencing, looking at, is I love pottery. So I go to a pottery class every Friday, and the lady that teaches me works with wood-fired glazes and, again, all of those kind of beautiful muted tones. And I'm really inspired by the work that she produces and being able to kind of play with my hands in a different way to channel my creativity into something which isn't just flowers. And sometimes those two things will marry together in a beautiful kind of glazed pot that I'll fill with dried flowers. But something else that I really enjoy spending time around and looking for kind of new artists is painters. So I love to see how they kind of put their colour combinations together, particularly oil painting, where you get those lovely brush textures and brush strokes. And so I would urge you to, have a look around. If you're in a city, there's so many amazing art galleries. Go and visit your local potter, have a look at the displays that they create, and just open your eyes to the breadth of things that are out there to inspire. Style is a really personal thing, and something that when you start working with dried flowers, or even when you create with anything, you need to learn to develop your own style and find the things that you love and that please your eyes and make you feel joyful about the things that you're creating with. So my style is definitely ever evolving. If I think about when I first started kind of 5-6 years ago, it was very close and tight and minute and in the detail, and probably quite reflective of my life back then, which was, we lived in a town with a small garden, and I was just really playing and kind of learning how to work with dried flowers. But since moving here to Devon a couple of years ago, my style has just grown and become wilder, freer, as I'm influenced by the outside world, as I'm influenced more by the things that I'm growing and the volume that I can grow with. And I think really through lots and lots of practice and honing and finding out what it is that I love. So I would encourage you as well, when you start to work with dried flowers, to just keep practicing. And it's always an iterative process. Your style and your kind of signature looks are never going to be finite and final. They can continue to evolve, and that's the beauty of working with something that is essentially nature, If you look outside, we've been here 2 years now, and I can tell that every season, even though it's the same season, things grow in different ways. Plants are popping up and developing, and it's the same for my work as well. Things to think about when you are trying to develop your style are whether you like to create things that are quite close together, quite compact, or whether you like to go for things that are a little bit more free and open. Whether you like the use of lots of sort of texturial ingredients like I have here, so beautiful seed heads and grasses, or whether you prefer to go for something a bit more structured and contemporary, maybe using, just block colours and lots of one single flower. It really depends on what your preferences are and what you like. And of course, the other side of it as well is maybe the colours that you like. So I personally am not a particular lover of the cool tones, so you won't find me actively working with blues or purples really, unless it's something like the purple of a heather, which I love. And that's just my personal style, but that doesn't mean that when a customer contacts me for a wreath and asks for blues to be in there, that I can't then create with it. But I know that my own love is more in these warm, muted, softer tones, the ones that, the reds, the pinks and the oranges. And so it's all about finding what you love, what fits within your home environment if you're creating for yourself, and also what you feel comfortable working with. I've got some examples of wreaths that I've made recently, and all of them quite different. So in my signature style, which is asymmetrical and very open, but this one here, for example, I put together actually out of some odds and ends that I have from a display and installation that I did up at Strawberry Hill House a weekend or so ago. And it's literally 2 ingredients. So I've got Honesty and Old Man's Beard and a little bit of naturally dyed silk ribbon that I just put together because I loved the combinations of them. And for me, this, for example, as a Christmas wreath would just be spot on. You don't need anything else in my eyes. But then equally something that's really reflective of the outside world at the moment. So, you know, we're autumn and it's all about those beautiful kind of earthy tones, is this wreath, which is put together with things that I foraged from the hedgerows around here. So I've got bracken, heather and hops, and that's it. And I've intertwined them together with hops going around the open base as well, just to create something really simple actually that reflects what's going on in the outside world. So this for me is autumn. And this wreath here, actually, when I started my business, it was mini wreaths that, you know, really kind of took off when I was selling things to customers. And I just love how delicate they are. And this one here I filled with some really beautiful grasses called Breesia Midia, and I've got some Gomphrena and a few little bits of Gypsophila. And it's just so beautiful, so delicate, but with movement, which I think is really important. When it comes to getting started and creating your own projects, I would just really encourage you to have a go, keep trying. I mean, if I think about the things that I used to create when I first started my business, you know, there were times when I was deeply unhappy with the things that I'd created, but just keep going because things will always get better and it's all about practice. And the other thing I would say as well is that if you are creating something like a wreath, maybe you want to start with that to, you know, or some of the displays that I'm going to show you in this course as well, is that keep going, because often when you start making something in the early stages, you'll just think this, you know, it's not working, it's not coming together, but just keep pushing through. And when you're at a certain point, take a step away from what you're making, leave the room, go and have a cup of tea, go for a walk, come back and have a look at it with fresh eyes. Because particularly with dried flowers, when you're working with things that are so delicate and so in the detail, you can get really caught up in that and lose sight of the bigger picture of the whole thing that you're creating. So take that moment to walk away and then come back, and I promise you, you'll probably see it with fresh eyes and fall in love.